Laptops and tablets and cell phones are amazing. There's no doubt about it. So you would think that these technological advances would enable students to perform better in their classes. At least that's the assumption. But do they? If you use your laptop or a tablet or a cell phone to take notes during class, does it help you or hurt you? Well, it turns out there's been research that's examined exactly that question, and the results may surprise you. So I'm talking about a study that was published with the title The Laptop and the Learner. And it looked at 44 Cornell University undergraduates, and Dell Computer gave them a free laptop to use for one semester way back in 2003. What Dell did while the students were using the laptops is to record with timestamps what students were doing. And don't worry about the ethics. Students knew that Dell was recording all of their activities. And of course, in this study, the company and the researchers encouraged people to use their laptops in school. So here's the study. Half the subjects in this experiment were told to use their laptops to take notes during lecture, okay? To use them as a student usually does. The other half of the students attended the same lecture, but at a different time, and they were told not to use their laptops during the lecture, but instead to write things down on a piece of paper, or just sit there and watch. At the end of both lectures, the one that students attended who were using the laptops and the lecture that students attended without the laptop, at the end of both of those lectures, students were given a surprise quiz on the content of that lecture. And this quiz only took, 10 minutes to complete. Here's the results. How well did students perform on this quiz? How much of the material from the lecture did they remember as a function of whether or not they were using laptops? Well, it turns out that the students who used the laptops during lecture scored significantly worse on the tests than the students who didn't use the laptops. Yikes! You won't be surprised maybe to learn that the computer company didn't fund any more research of this nature. It was kind of a shock, right? This is not what they expected to find. But it turns out that when you're using your laptop to take notes during lecture, you remember less from the lecture than people who did not use a laptop to take notes. What's the end result of that? People who use a laptop during lecture to save time, to take better notes, turns out using the laptop costs them time because now they have to spend more time studying what they don't remember because they were distracted by their laptop. So what is it that students were doing that was distracting during the class? And what is it that students can do without so much distraction? On a laptop. So this is a chart that I'm showing you now from a 2017 study called Logged In and Zoned Out, How Laptop Internet Use Relates to Classroom Learning. And what this study found is there's a significant negative relationship between many of the things that students do on laptops and their grades in the class. So the more you do these things on your laptop during a lecture, the lower your grade in that class is going to be. So the worst things were using your laptop to work on social media or to go shopping or reading email. If you're doing those things on your laptop, those things are associated with lower grades in the class. Watching videos, I've actually seen students come in and watch TV during a lecture. My old brain just steams when I see this. Those students, they're not going to get a good grade in the class, right? Because the videos that they're watching take up their attention, so they have less attentional resources to devote to the lecture. The students who are chatting or reading news and sports, not so bad. Usually the chat is about the lecture, right? Somebody might be texting a friend saying, oh God, wasn't that funny what the professor just did? Or what a doofus, or who knows. But I want you to see this. Students need to see this, right? Okay. Let's say you come to lecture, back in the day when we could go to lectures, but you come to lecture with a piece of paper and a pencil because you've seen these other two studies and you are not going to be distracted. You don't have time to fool around. You are there to understand the material in the lecture. You don't have time to study outside a lecture. You need to learn the material in lecture. Great. But what happens when the student sitting next to you pulls out their laptop and goes shopping? Does that lower your grade? Yes. Yes. When a student is sitting next to somebody who is using their laptop, their performance on a quiz at the end of that lecture is lower than the students who are sitting next to somebody who is not using their laptop. So, when you go and sit in a big lecture hall and the person sitting next to you is going to watch a video or go shopping, write a paper, move, get away from them. Because sitting next to them hinders your ability to learn the material, and it's costing you time sitting next to those people. And the amount of the grade drop? A full letter grade. You might be a great student, but if you sit next to somebody who's working on their computer during lecture, your letter grade drop. Your exam, your understanding of the material drops a full letter grade. And if you're looking at the difference between a C and a D, wow. How do researchers study the challenges that students face in a lecture hall when there's distractions? How do researchers study that? Well, originally they used, and still sometimes use, something called a dual task technique. Very simple. You bring somebody into the lab, you put some headphones on them, and each ear of the headphone plays a different story. So if we look at this fellow here, in one of his ears, he's listening to a story about horses galloping across a field, and in the other ear, he's reading about or hearing about Abraham Lincoln. Okay. So you set somebody up, two messages, one in each ear, and you tell them to pay attention to one message and ignore the other one. Usually you ask people to shadow one of the messages, and shadowing just means repeating what you're hearing in the one ear. And what I'd like to do now is play a demo so you can get a sense, not a great sense, but a little bit of a sense of what that's like. So let's do that now.
All right, so today I'm going to talk about four things. These are the four critical things to remember. How the first relates to how we make mystery. For me, it's kind of strange because the second thing is perception. The third thing is memory. The fourth thing is knowledge. That's going to change. I'll warn you. So what I did was I did a lot of checks serial magic. Serial magic. What are the big? And that made it really great because that way I could eat perceptions, memory tricks, and the knowledge for my friends. The big, you know what I mean? Okay.
So. Just two things to pay attention to. There's only two things going on, right? One in each ear. When you pay attention to what's happening in one ear, or when you pay attention to what's happening in one message, your understanding of the other message is reduced, right? When you're talking about a demanding task, paying attention to one thing means that you don't understand or attend to or remember the other thing nearly as well. The unattended message is lost, right? But not everything is lost from the unattended message. And I'm talking about dichotic listening studies. If I'm telling you to listen to what's happening in one ear, what you can determine from the unattended ear is whether the voice of the person speaking, if that person changes from male to female. That's probably a function not of gender or sex, but it's probably a function of differences in how deeply, are you speaking at a high frequency or a really, really low frequency? And you know if there was something, some kind of message in your unattended ear, but you don't know what that message is. What I want to do now is play another video. Well, let me just play the video and you'll see.
The cocktail party effect is another example of selective attention. Now imagine you're in a room having a conversation with your friends about how much you love your Introduction to Psychology Udacity class and how everybody should take it. Then, all of a sudden, you heard your name from across the room. In this example, you were selectively attending to the conversation you were having, yet still heard your name across the noisy room with a bunch of other conversations going on. So, you were able to filter out the background auditory stimuli that wasn't important. That was that background conversations. Yet, you were still able to focus on the important stimulus, that was your name. So that background information came to the foreground.
Okay, so that was a little bit of a gotcha. But did you notice what happened to the woman's hair and clothes as you were paying attention to what she was saying? You're looking right at her, and yet you don't notice when her clothes change? All right. Come right back and we'll talk more, actually talk about the cocktail party effect.